What's up, everybody? Good morning if you're watching this in the morning, or whatever time in the day you happen to be catching this video. We wanted to make this video for you guys that talks about the scary moments we had that made us want to quit or made us want to turn around.
And our trip is actually only halfway done. We're trying to get to the tip of South America, but so much has already happened. We were just talking about it the other day, on and off camera. There have been just crazy moments that anyone experiences while traveling, and we thought it might be fun to share those moments with you.
And if you're new here, we entered Mexico in January, which was 9.5 months ago. Since then, we've been traveling south, heading towards Argentina, or the very tip of South America. We're currently in Colombia, and there's a lot that's happened between Mexico and Colombia. So I guess first we'll start off with crossing the border into Mexico. We see the comments that people leave, we hear the horror stories. So right before we crossed into Mexico, we had tons and tons of people tell us, you're gonna get your head chopped off by the cartel, you're gonna get kidnapped and held for ransom.
We made it to Mexico, baby! Woo!
Yeah, I'm so excited.
So nothing actually happened to us in this circumstance, but just the overwhelming feedback we were getting from people we trust, from my parents, from our friends and family, telling us this was a really dangerous, unsafe idea, really made us question whether it was a good decision to travel south.
Long story short, we decided to go for it. We absolutely loved Mexico. There was really nothing to be afraid of, except for fear itself. We pushed forward. We went into Mexico. We're super glad that we did.
Even though we're about to talk about some of the not so great things that did happen to us while we were in Mexico and some of the other countries, overall we had a great experience. We just want to preface with that.
It's true.
So we're traveling in our van. Our van is our home. It has all of our stuff. It has our dog, Frank. We try to keep the van as secure and safe as possible. This is our priority, to make sure our lives stay intact. The first story we wanted to share with you happened almost 4 months into Mexico. We had just gotten back into the van from having lunch. We were full, we were a little tired. We closed the door and we hear a door open.
Well, Allie was in the back of the van, and I was actually up in the driver's seat, but I wasn't sitting in the seat. I was standing in between the two seats. I think I was grabbing something. I had unlocked the doors because that's how we got into the van when we came back from lunch. And as I'm standing in the cab, the driver's door opens. And that's something that just like kind of registers in your head as like, oh, the door opened. But it's like, oh, well, Allie's in here and there's nobody that we know outside. So as I look over, there's a homeless guy that's pretty deranged and probably on drugs or a drunk or something. Looked like he probably hadn't showered in a year. I look him in the eyes and he looks at me and basically in Spanish like asks for money. And I was like, no! So I grabbed the door and I slammed the door closed, like thinking that would like stop him, and he just opened the door again. Really like boost of adrenaline, and then I screamed at him like, no! And then like slammed the door again and locked it. He got a little disoriented and then he kind of turned and walked off. But like just that experience with a guy that wasn't trying to hurt anybody or do anything, probably just didn't even know where he was. That situation right there like kind of scared me. You don't know, your door's open and some guy opens the door. The guy could have had a gun or whatever. Like,
our guard was down. We hang out with the doors unlocked all the time, and just feeling so vulnerable that someone could come in even in broad daylight and potentially take advantage of us freaked us out.
Yeah. So the next story we're going to tell you guys happened only a few days later. It was when we were in Tapachula, Mexico. We were about to cross into Guatemala. So we get all of our paperwork done, we exit Mexico, everything's going smooth. There's these helpers that keep wanting to try and help us.
They're at every border. They're called tramitadores, and you can pay them a tip and they'll help get your paperwork done smoothly and supposedly, allegedly, help you get through the border quickly. And these tramitadores told us we had to go to the ATM and pull out cash because the borders only accept cash, and that it was going to be a huge problem that the van was registered to the United States and the motorcycle was registered to Mexico. And because they weren't registered to the same country, it was going to be a huge fee and all these problems. But don't worry, they were going to be able to help us.
So I go with the guy to the ATM, and as I'm like putting in my card, he starts like pushing the buttons on the ATM for me, and I was like, whoa, I'll work the ATM, man. Like, I got this. I don't need your help with the ATM. So then I finally pull out the money, and as soon as I pull out the money, he holds out his hand.
It was like $300.
It was $300.
It was a lot of money.
And I was like, what do you want this? And he's like, here, I will go pay for you. And I was like, no. I was like, I'll pay. You show me where to go. You take me. And he's like, no. It's okay. I take care of everything. I'll take the money. I will go pay for you, blah, blah, blah. So I get back to Allie. We kind of discuss what's going on, whether we should give this guy cash. So we decide, let's just walk up to the desk at the border. So we walk up to the desk, and maybe 20 or 30 feet before we get to the desk, the tramitadoras vanish. They turn and run. Obviously a sign that they were trying to scam us.
Anyway, we got up to the desk. They told us it was $50 or something nominal. It was not going to be an issue, and to please get in this line. So just another case of our ignorance and vulnerability, but it definitely scared us when you feel like you're supposed to be able to trust people that are helping you, and then they take advantage of you like that. A few days later, we had another really interesting experience in Guatemala. The roads in Guatemala were extremely steep compared to what we had been used to in Mexico. Of course, there's mountains in Mexico, but for some reason in Guatemala, they just build their highways straight up and straight down. And we were trying to get to a trailhead for Tajumulco, the tallest peak in all of Central America. We wanted to hike to the top of this peak. It was going to be incredible, but the roads to get there were really hard on the van. So we decided, okay, we'll sleep at a police station at the base of the mountain. We won't have to drive as much, stress the van as much, and just go hike in the morning. So we got to this police station, we parked out front and walked inside, and there were about 10 or 15 men standing around in t-shirts and jeans. No one was in uniform, but they claimed to be police officers. And
we tell them we have these motorcycles on the back of our vans, and we're gonna take our motorcycles up to, halfway up the mountain and then hike the rest. And they kept telling us, no, leave your motos here.
Once they figured out what type of motos we had.
Yeah,
it was weird.
There was a couple red flags that came up.
Yeah.
And these guys were acting very...
really curious.
And like kind of manipulative with the way they were trying to get us to stay where they were, and kept asking questions about the bikes.
Basically, we were asking if we could park in their parking lot and then in the morning take the motorcycles up toward the trailhead and hike from there. And they were trying to talk us out of that, saying they would call us a car in the morning to take us to the trailhead, that we didn't need to take the motorcycles, which makes no logical
leave
sense.
The motos here. Well, we got kind of spooked and we decided to leave. So as we left that village, we found a place to park, and we found some local guides that take people up the mountain. And we said to them, we're gonna take our motos halfway up and then go hiking. And they said, yeah, that's the best. Don't take a car. So for the police to be telling us to take a car and not take our motos just seemed, it kind of reinforced and validated what we were feeling.
So that's just an example of when your gut and your intuition is screaming a message at you, and you feel very conflicted about listening to it because you're taught that the police are safe and trustworthy, and in 99% of the cases they are.
We had bad feelings.
Yeah, really bad.
And maybe we didn't want to turn around and head back to the States at that point, but it was another point that kind of scared us and shaped us.
So far, the experiences we had had on this trip were scary and unsettling, but not necessarily life-threatening. We're not exactly sure what that police situation could have evolved into, but I don't want to believe it was life-threatening. When we got to El Salvador, we did something that I thought was going to be a lot of fun, and it ended up becoming a really scary moment.
When we were in El Tunco, which is a little surf town on the beach in El Salvador, it was an awesome place to be. There's a lot of people that travel from all over the world to go surf there. There's a really awesome wave. And I had been surfing in California a few years previous. I have some decent experience. So I decided I was gonna buy a surfboard and I was gonna go out and surf. And I headed out with a couple of guys that were traveling there. Needless to say, this wave was probably a little above my pay grade.
This wave is very popular for surfers. There was a big group of people out there surfing, but this coastline has a really strong riptide. Undertow. That Trent, all surfers know about undertows and how to avoid them and get out of them, but they're still life-threatening if you if you get stuck in a situation.
I'm a really strong swimmer. I swam competitively from when I was 5 years old until I was almost 18. So I definitely know how to swim. That is not a problem that I've ever had. However, while trying to drop in on one of the waves, another surfer dropped in front of me and ran across my leash, and our boards got tangled. I was drug into the riptide, into the undertow, and the waves started kind of crashing on me and beating me up. I was trying desperately to swim and get out of there, and after 45 seconds or so of battling with these waves, I was completely exhausted. I couldn't breathe. I could barely get back on my board after these waves were toppling me. There was at least one, if not multiple moments where looking at the next wave coming at me and not being able to catch my breath was me realizing that I might die. I might drown here because of these waves. The way that these riptides catch you is that as you start trying to swim out, the riptide pulls you into the wave and then it puts you under, and by the time you get back up, you can't move a few feet before the next wave gets on top of you.
I was sitting on the beach with Frank, being completely oblivious to what was going on. I actually filmed him getting out of the water. He walks up to the camera, and I think we said a few words to the camera, and then I turned the camera off, which was one of the few times that I realized in the moment this was a much more serious situation than I could handle with filming at the same time.
It was extremely intense.
Luckily, he was able to walk away from that and has been surfing since, but it was probably the worst moment of the trip so far.
And that didn't necessarily make us feel like we needed to turn around and head back to the States, but it was a terrifying experience that happened along this journey.
Luckily, you're okay. But that super freaked us out.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Shake that off.
yeah, since then, we're very careful about where we surf. Basically, just go surfing with people and don't go to waves that are too big for you. Just take it slow. There's no shame in taking it slow.
Yeah. So the next experience took place only about 2 weeks later. And again, we are in El Salvador.
Honduras wasn't super stable and super safe at the time that we were traveling through it, so we decided to just make the trek in one day, cross from El Salvador into Honduras and Honduras, Nicaragua, all in the same day, which we knew would be a very long day. And the Nicaragua border has a reputation for being extremely nitpicky and complicated, and
Takes hours to get through.
it was definitely the longest border crossing of our trip. By the time we got through the border, it was late at night and we were so mentally exhausted. We knew that border towns were dangerous, but we were just looking for a safe place to sleep.
So we found a place on iOverlander that was in a little centro of this tiny little town, and it said it had 24-hour security, so we weren't too worried. We pulled up, we put up our shades, we went to bed. But at about 12:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of somebody trying to break into the van.
Our windows are tinted, so basically Trent heard someone yanking on the door handle on the passenger side of the van. He ran up front and pulled the curtain back and was looking directly into the eyes of a man trying to jimmy the lock open. He had a crowbar or some tool stuck in the side of the door and was trying to break open the van. And then the guy started talking to someone else, indicating that maybe there was other people behind him or next to him that Trent couldn't see.
It was sketchy. I didn't want to open the door and try to fight these guys. I don't know what their intentions are. I don't know if they have a gun or a knife or anything. I wasn't trying to battle some random people in the middle of the night. Not to mention, I'm wearing my boxers and that's it. And it's 12:30 at night where I had just woken up, so I am not sharp as a tack. So the only thing that comes to mind is grab the keys and drive away. So I grabbed the keys and we had some things stacked in the front seat. I start trying to remove these things from the front seat so that I can jump up there and start the van. And as I'm removing these things and shaking the van, I think they both noticed that the van was moving and they both took off running. These are not hardened criminals that were trying to kidnap us or do anything crazy. These were just some kids that thought, someone parked this nice van here, I'm gonna steal some stuff out of it. That was very scary And I would say that after that experience took place, my quality of sleep was terrible because it almost didn't matter where we went or where we were. Even if it was during the daytime, someone was going to try to break into the van every time we parked it anywhere. That was a rough experience. Mostly because of, like I said, the aftershock. It's not really what happened, wasn't that traumatic. It was just the vulnerability that you feel. That was something that made us think about turning around and not continuing.
For sure. This next story isn't actually tied to one country. Pretty much as soon as we crossed into Mexico, we noticed that there are not very many blue heelers, or Australian cattle dogs, which is the breed that Frank is. So we take him pretty much everywhere with us. We try to get him exercise, so he walks around towns with us, and people love to pet him and say hello, and we love that.
The phrase "que raza" is one of the first Spanish phrases that I actually memorized, and that's because almost every person in Spanish that would come up and talk to us would ask, "Que raza?" What breed or what race is Frank? That's because he's a blue heeler and they are not common in this part of the world.
We thought this was fine and very cool until we started noticing some people giving us strange vibes when they came up to ask us about Frank. And a couple different times, particularly men, would come up to me and ask about Frank, whether he was neutered, how old he was,
offer to buy him,
how are his joints, questions that are like very indicative of they want your dog. And it was obvious that this was happening at times when I was not next to Trent. One night we were just passing through a little town. We pulled up at a gas station to park for the night. We actually ended up meeting another couple of travelers in a van, and they had adopted a blue heeler puppy.
When we pulled up at this gas station to park for the night, you could kind of tell something was wrong with this couple. They were talking to the gas station attendants. There was a small group of locals around them, and within maybe 15 or 20 minutes, there was a police car there with a couple of policemen.
I think eventually we realized that their Spanish wasn't great, and I think I went in to try to help them translate or see if they needed any help talking to the police. And that's when the girl explained to me that their puppy had just been stolen by another couple who had a dog, and their dog was playing with the other couple's dog, and they just scooped up their puppy, threw it into their car, and drove away in front of this other couple.
That's crazy. I would kill someone if they tried to steal our dog. But it's hearing horror stories like that and witnessing the aftermath firsthand that makes you realize these things happen and this is possible. So you just really need to be on top of your A game and make sure you're keeping after your belongings and your fiance and your dog.
We keep Frank on a leash all the time unless we're somewhere very safe. In Costa Rica, Trent went to go fishing down at a river, and I was parked in the van right next to the river, and a truck pulls up and parks behind me. I think I was just outside of the van, like cleaning, and Frank was on a leash tied to a tree. We were both outside, and this guy gets out of the truck and starts walking over to me, which already has me on alert mode, you know, just because I'm by myself. And so I instinctively just reach for the leash so that I at least have Frank closer to me, and he starts asking me about the dog and if the dog is neutered and how old the dog is and all these questions that I've heard before that I already know where this is going. And so I immediately just I'm smiling, responding, walk toward the van, throw Frank inside, slam the door, and end the conversation as quickly as possible. Scary, really scary.
So that's just another level of stress we've had to deal with on the trip that kind of makes you scared in certain situations.
Yeah.
I think the last thing that we have to mention as far as things that have scared us or things that have made us want to turn around is when we got to Panama. Panama is not even to the equator yet. It's not even halfway down to the tip of South America. So there's a lot of road ahead of you, but this is kind of that tipping point where if you don't ship, then you just turn around and drive back to the States. If you ship, then not only do you have to keep going all the way, but then you've got to ship back at some point. So it's just this huge point of commitment.
Yeah.
And shipping is extremely difficult. It's very confusing. It's very expensive. It's in 100% Spanish. There's a lot of corruption. It's just a very stressful decision to make. And we contemplated multiple times stopping in Panama and not continuing.
Luckily, it all worked out.
Yeah.
So far,
We decided to keep going.
we're doing it.
So now we're in Colombia. If you guys are watching this for the first time and you don't know who we are, welcome. This is Trent and I'm Allie. We're going to be heading down to the tip of South America within the next 8 or 9 months.
We try to always keep a really positive outlook on life, and we love travel. Overall, travel is incredible. For all of the negative experiences that we've had on this trip, they have been so outweighed 1,000,000 times over by all the positive things that have happened to us.
This is a very small number of experiences compared to the number of amazing, awesome, positive experiences that we've had on this trip. And that's the main reason why we're here and we haven't turned around, is because the pros definitely outweigh the cons.
Yeah.
Obviously, nothing too drastic has happened to us. We're healthy, we're safe,
Yeah.
we're here, we're continuing.
There's two things I really want to say, is that we're so grateful that these are the worst experiences that have happened to us so far. That
Absolutely.
it hasn't been anything worse than this. We're so appreciative and aware of how lucky we are, and we hope to continue to use our common sense and stay as safe as possible, but we'll share that with you as it goes. And second of all, these experiences have colored the way we travel for sure, but I think we've grown from them.
Absolutely.
In a very valuable way, and it's made us better travelers and better people, more empathetic to what's going on and why people act the way they do.
So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment. We would love to hear what you guys have to say. Maybe leave some of your scary travel stories in the comments as well. We'd love reading those. Also, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell as well so that you're notified the next time that we upload a video of one of our upcoming adventures. Like the video, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Adios.
Wait for better days to come and carry us like wind in our sails. Hold on tight, I can smell the shore, it's right in front of us if we just